Okay, thank you, everyone. My name is Jamie Smith, originally from the UK, but as you might notice by my tan, I currently now live in Italy. This is the 11th session you'll have attended today and the last one before coffee, so I'm going to change it up a little bit. Instead of following the normal structure, I'm going to flip the structure around. We're going to start by some emotional grounding, then I'm going to jump to my conclusion, and then we're going to work backwards. And that's the this is my abstract, just so we all have it in the slides later on. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone here, please think back to when you were in school, back to when you were a student sat in a school classroom. And the two of you that are shaking your heads, this is exactly why we're doing this. So think back to when you were in school. And think back to when you were sat in a geography lesson. I've picked geography at random. How did you feel? What emotional response did you have to geography? We'll go again. Think back to a biology lesson. You're sat in your science lab. How did you feel? Now think back to when you were sat in a maths lesson. Maybe preparing for your maths exams, maybe starting your primary or secondary education. How did you feel? When I asked most people about maths and maths education, and the people I sat with at lunch, when I said, oh, my area of research is in mathematics, most people go, oh. And it's that emotion that we're going to talk about today. I mentioned that I'm going to jump straight to my conclusion, and here's my conclusion. We're going to talk about mathematics apathy and the apathy gap in mathematics. I'll describe where this comes from in a moment, but here is my definition of mathematics apathy. And I'm going to do the cardinal sin of reading. Mathematics apathy is a motivational deficit in which learners neither value nor expect success in mathematics. It's often connected to maths anxiety, but mathematics apathy is underpinned by a lack of self-confidence and self-efficacy. That's how I'm describing mathematics apathy. And I'm now going to explain how I got to that definition. Here's our problem space. Most research in achievement emotions in mathematics is centered on mathematics anxiety. It's that nervousness and tension about studying mathematics. It's the facial expression when someone gives you a maths question. It's those negative feelings towards mathematics. Generally, we talk about how they interfere with solving problems and interfere with mathematical performance. And if you look in the literature, you will see an extensive amount of research on maths anxiety. Well, it's associated to the gender differences. There is a massive male-female divide in maths anxiety, and also its impact on poor mathematical performance. Additionally, students with high levels of maths anxiety also experience high levels of mathematics avoidance. That can be subject avoidance. No way am I studying mathematics at college. Let me avoid those modules or courses. But it can also be task avoidance. Students going, I'm not going to do the extension task. I'm not going to do that extra task. I'm going to do the minimum and stop. So where does mathematics apathy fit into this? Maths anxiety is often paired on a dipole with mathematics confidence. Often people say, I'm anxious about mathematics or I'm confident about mathematics. And the results from the study that I'm going to describe show why that might not be completely true. Mathematics anxiety is activating. It is an activating emotion of distress. We talk about the fight, fright, or freeze fight, or freeze responses of mathematics. People either engage with it, run away from it, or completely break down. Not always true. My background's in maths. My bachelor's and first master's degrees are in mathematics. I love the subject. Yeah. Give me a Sudoku any day. But for so many people, that's not the case. In contrast, mathematics apathy is deactivating. It's that stepping back. It's the detachment. It's the student sat in the back of the classroom, not participating, not engaging. They're in the room, but nothing more. But the effect is, mathematics requires sustained attention. It requires ongoing support. You cannot start mathematics at age 14. You've got to build up to that. And this is the gap in the literature. Most of the research talks about mathematics anxiety and mathematics confidence as dipoles. They are opposites. Often in educational psychology, that's how they are referred. People think, in general, high confidence means low anxiety, and the inverse, low confidence means high anxiety. Now, that can be true for many students. That's not what we find in these results. And meta-analysis shows that there is a relationship between the two. To be clear, I'm not saying they are completely distinct. I'm saying that direct line might need some further thought. Should mention a theoretical foundation at this stage. Again, working backwards. A lot of this is centered on control value theory. So Peckeren and their very, very long list of references talk about how students find value and find association in two domains. They have control for the subject, which can be real or perceived, and they find value in that subject, which again can be real or perceived. And Peckeren says that control value theory predicts where deactivating and activating emotions exist within maths education. It's also underpinned by social cognitive theory and zones of proximal development by Vygotsky and others. I'm not going to dive into those now, but it is connected in this wider literature. And here's where we get to. We get to this relatively simple 4-quadrant graph. We've got value on one side and control along the bottom. You'll notice the arrows indicate high and low. In the top corner, students that have a high value, either true or perceived, of mathematics. People that believe mathematics has a high value, but they feel they have low control over the subject. They don't have ownership. They don't have belief that what they do matters. A lot of those students fall into the mathematics anxiety group. The next one is where we would love all of our students to be. High value and high control. They put a lot of belief in mathematics. They think it's important and a valuable subject, high value, and they have high control. They believe the effort that they are putting into the subject will be rewarded. And when I first started looking into this, I thought those were the only two options. It was a complete astoundment to me that there would be people that had low value of mathematics. Because of course mathematics is important. Everyone knows that mathematics has some value. But is that value perceived value? And we reach these last two quadrants. I'll talk about indifference first. So mathematics indifference would be students that have high control over the subject. They believe the work they put into it makes a difference. They believe that if they practice those questions, they are going to get a good score. But they just don't care. They don't see the value we attribute to the subject. And then the worst quadrant, in my opinion, mathematics apathy. Students that have a low value of mathematics, they don't put much belief in the subject, and they have low control over that subject. Whether I study or not, it's not going to make a difference. And yeah, this is me just describing that again. So that perceived control, can I succeed? Not particularly relevant if that's true or a perceived control, but it's the belief of, can I succeed? And the perceived value of, does it matter? I know that quite a few of you in the audience are maths teachers, maths researchers. How often do we hear people say, oh, I never needed that. Why am I learning this at school? I never needed to learn algebra. I never needed to learn calculus. Is that the impression we're giving to our students? So I've been talking about some results and some conclusions. Let's go back to the data. So these results come from a pretty large study that I did. It was the basis of my doctorate, looking at UK secondary school students aged 11 to 14. So those that know the UK, that's Key Stage 3, school years, year 7, 8, and 9. And we looked at students in all three of those years, longitudinally for some, and not for the year 9s at the very end. And we looked at two measures. We looked at their mathematics anxiety and their mathematics confidence. And the headline result was this: students' mathematics anxiety decreases throughout secondary education. That's within the span of 1 year. So start of the school year to the end of the school year, and start of year 7 to end of year 9, and also that mid-step in year 8. Students' anxiety decreases. Hooray! The problem is there is no corresponding increase in confidence. So what's happening? Confidence stays the same, but anxiety is decreasing. Where does that emotional energy go? Maybe it disappears. Maybe 14-year-olds have a different understanding of emotional energy. But actually what the pattern shows is students are getting less anxious, but not more confident. Just to declare, this is an AI-generated image. I generated this and then asked a friend of mine who's a graphic designer to make an image. And then I looked at this and thought, actually, that's exactly what I wanted. So AI-generated image is declared on the slide. So this is what we see. Green denotes confidence, and it's pretty consistent across the years. F-tests, ANOVAs, and linear models show no significant differences in confidence. Whereas in anxiety, we see it decreasing. So there's a gap. Hopefully you can see in my diagram where the student's head's on the desk. Those that have taught secondary school mathematics, you'll be familiar with this. That's my test of who's a secondary school maths teacher in the room. What we see is this gap increase. We see that students are becoming more pathetic towards mathematics. They're losing that emotional connection. But why? These are now takeaways from focus groups conducted with these students, results to be published at a later date. One of the main reasons is building blocks. If they miss something, if they miss a particular unit, they can't then jump back into a later unit. This is one of the age-old problems with mathematics. You cannot study calculus if you've not studied algebra. You can't do the rearranging. You can't do quadratic equations if you've not done linear equations. If students miss one building block, they cannot do the next one. Are they going to be anxious about it? Or are they just going to be apathetic about it? Well, I missed last unit's module, so I can't do this unit's module. And in mathematics, we feel this all the time. If they miss one element, the next one is so much harder. It doesn't take long for us to break that student's self-confidence and for them to realize, well, I've got to be here, but I don't have to emote and give to it. Secondly, societal value. We all know there is an intrinsic value in numeracy. We all have this belief that numeracy and core mathematics is essential. How essential is Pythagoras? How essential is the quadratic equation? In so many fields it is. But when we reach a societal level where people go, I'm not very good at maths, what step have we fallen into? And this is where students' value of the subject drops down. They go from anxiety and excellence down to indifference and apathy. If society doesn't keep the value of mathematics, and that's the schools, the parents, the communities, the students aren't going to. And lastly, we reach these additional two questions. Why are we just solving problems? Again, a lot of maths, particularly repetitive practicing maths. We heard earlier about engagement in subjects and why that requires repetitive action. If students don't see the value in something, they see it as just solving exercises. We need to build the value back into our subjects. And lastly, because you can't do an academic presentation nowadays without mentioning AI, I've got it up there. Why can't we just use AI? Another question we get from children. I can't remember who it was. Somebody this morning mentioned about we've added calculators and we now accept calculators as a tool used in mathematics. AI will one day be considered a tool we use in education, a tool we use in the workplace. It's not there yet. And until we get there, we need the societal value of mathematics. The last two things I'll mention are the implications. What are the implications for mathematics apathy? Why do we need to worry about it? I'll start with theory. It expands control value theory. It formalizes what is in the low quadrant, low value section. A lot of the literature in CBT talks about the other three quadrants. It doesn't mention that low control, low value, particularly in core subjects. Because maybe for a very long time, the idea that mathematics would have a low value is something we didn't have to worry about. Unfortunately, we're moving towards it. It also challenges the confidence-anxiety continuum. Yes, there is still a very significant and very impactful relationship between confidence and anxiety, but are they really dipoles? Are they really the opposite ends of those magnets? 3, it provides an explanatory power for silent disengagement. Students aren't leaving the classrooms. We do attendance. We know they're still there. We know they're similarly confident, but where's that energy going? It goes into mathematics apathy. We'll jump over to teachers. Apathy must be addressed explicitly. When I was doing my research with teachers, focus groups and interviews with teachers, they were all incredibly proud that they decreased anxiety in their students, as they should be. That's a good goal, a good result. But if there isn't that positive step, what's happened? Yes, your students are less nervous, but if they're less nervous because they're less engaged, have we made a positive step? We've got to be addressing apathy. And the ways in which teachers can do this is to rebuild that perceived control, bring back the ownership of students tackling their own questions. Scaffolding and mastery are the two most common there. They need to rebuild the perceived value, showing students why mathematics still possesses value. And a lot of that is reconnecting with teachers, reconnecting with parents. The old phrase is that, oh, I never did maths like that. I don't need maths. We can't have that belief anymore. Lastly, professional learning should include apathy awareness. We are starting to add it in teacher training courses that I'm involved with at the university, but it's being added as an afterthought. Hopefully, with time, we can move it up to an initial thought. For people that look at the presentations afterwards, here's a massive amount of references. I'm not expecting anyone to read them in the room. These are the 19 in the paper. And we'll finish by saying, let's talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, look at that hand.
Oh, here we go.
We'll start in the back and then move forward. So there's some